I like, click, and subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. It's Netflix time. This movie is called Shepherds and Butchers. When a young prison guard commits murder in South Africa, an ardent lawyer aims to prove he was psychologically unbalanced by his role in executions. So it's a South African psychological thriller that took place, the year is 2016 that this movie came out. It's about an hour, 46 minutes long. This one might be intensely graphic, so I'm going to let you know up in front. Spoiler alert. So let's get it. So this is taking place in South Africa in 1987. We have this guy named Leon who's being chased by a football team, and he's got like blood on the side of his face. He leads him out to this spot called Quadri Hill and shoots all 7 guys, leaving them dead. So we got this lawyer in the case by the name of John Weber. He's actually going to try to defend Leon. I don't even know how you'd be able to do that in this situation. So they go through his back history and find out he was a warden or officer in a maximum security prison for 2 years. During this time there, he helped out with the executions, and last year, he witnessed 164 hangings. Yeah, exactly. Like, what the fuck? So every now and then he goes to this guy named Pierre. He asks him questions about death row and stuff like that because he used to be a warden and he was also in the military too. He's basically trying to get anything he can to just at least build a case, if nothing else. So in the courtroom, we see bodies or killings or whatever like that, and the dude Leon took the time to put them all in a straight line. Why he would do that? Who knows? So, Pierre's going to help him out all he can, but really he's thinking to himself, like, why are you wasting your time? This other guy, Mike, that's worked with him on a lot of cases too, he's also thinking the same thing. He's like, why are you wasting your time trying to defend this guy? So it gets to the point he doesn't want to prove that he's innocent. He wants to prove that he was mentally unstable and that he won't get the death penalty if nothing else. Now I'm thinking to myself, they found him, they found the gun, they found the bodies. You're going to attempt to fight for the fact that he might have had PTSD or a mental illness to try to get him a lesser punishment? Yeah, Judge, my thoughts exactly. Like, fuck out of here. But they push on with the case and ask Leon about his first day working at the warden. Talks about how the warden made him pick which one he wanted to carry to death row. They would get him all out their cells, handcuff him, take him up the stairway, and they would have him in this beige room with 7 nooses. Then the executioner would pull the lever and then that'll be it. He said at one point in time they ended up killing 21 prisoners in 3 days. Considering that to be a record, you gotta think this was back in 1987. He has to talk to the victims' family members. Yeah, it's just like, what do you say to them, you know what I mean? I mean, it's a no-win situation. You're defending a murderer, you know what I'm saying? And he says he took this case because basically nobody else would. I mean, like, obviously, nobody would, nobody in the world would be able to defend him, even with all the evidence laid out and all that stuff. It's like, why as a lawyer would you take this case? Then he goes back and talks about his second day at work. How the prisoners, the ones that he got real close to, are the ones that he had to help get hung. And throughout the whole time, John is basically just asking what kind of mind state he was in when all this was taking place. Alright, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Back in the courtroom again, we talk about Leon's last day working at the warden's office. They were ready to hang another 7 prisoners, but these prisoners were acting wild and bucksish and rambunctious. You know what I'm saying? They were going out without a fight. So the guards were forced to put on masks and throw tear gas bombs. They had to put them in straitjackets before they were able to get them up the steps. They got them up there and did it quickly on this one. But one of them was still moving, so Leon had to pull the rope up and with the help of somebody else and make sure they dropped him again and again. So the warden made him get his hands dirty instead of the executioner just dropping them off. So on this particular day, after they cleaned the bodies up, he was the one that had to drop them off in coffins. So him and this other black guy was driving and he almost hit a car and he had to swerve off the road. And that's when Leon hit his head against the dashboard. This guy opens up the back, sees the bodies, and dips the fuck out. Alright, so you see that his ear's bleeding, right? Everything happens this same day. He gets to a spot where he buries all the coffins. Once he had got the last one in, it started to rain. And this is when he was driving, so it takes you back to the beginning. That's why the blood was on him, because he ran off the road or whatever and hit his head against the dashboard. Then John keeps asking Leon what was going through his mind when all this stuff was happening. But he kept saying he couldn't remember. Judge got to the point where like, alright, you're badgering the witness now. Now the prosecutor gets on the stand. She starts talking about the beads that he collected and everything like that, and convinces the crowd like, hey, this guy is still a murderer. As you can see, the family's all distraught. So after the testimony, John just gets back up, feeling defeated. He's just like, you killed him. So I'm thinking to myself, he's trying to reverse psychology or something? Like, what's going on? But he just led right into it. I was like, all right. Later on, he gets the judge and friends actually to Quarry Hill with Leon present and tries to convince the judge the sound of the door is kind of like the sound of the trap door he would hear when he was working in the maximum security prison. Implying for that would be the reason to set him off. And of course, when they mess with the door, he starts having convulsions and falling to the ground. Then he asks the judge to go to one more place, the hanging room itself. John asks the warden to demonstrate the lever being pulled. Yeah, it's a very loud and horrifying sound, honestly. And think about the psychology behind that too, like you're basically going there to die. So as the defendant and prosecutor give their final statements, the judge reached the verdict. In the case of Leon Leverskafny, we find the defendant. Should I tell him? You ready for? Hey, should I tell him? Maybe. I'll tell y'all. They found him guilty. I mean, he's getting 20 years, but because of the fact he was 17 when all this was going down and his mind state was messed up, that he'll get parole maybe after 20 years of prison. I mean, it's not a popular decision whatsoever, but John somehow made sure he didn't get the death penalty. Man, that shit is crazy. There was one line in the movie where he says, and I quote, "There's no way you get off scot-free killing 7 people unless you're a cop." And I'm thinking to myself, nowadays, that's not really that far-fetched. Obviously, the victims' family members are not happy about any of this, and they're singing hymns outside the courtroom. And the last shot they show is John walking out of the courtroom. So here's a fact for you. After more than 4,200 executions, South Africa declared a moratorium on the death penalty. Moratorium on the death penalty, my bad. A moratorium is basically a temporary prohibition of the activity. Basically a temporary stoppage. Capital punishment was abolished on June 6, 1995, after Nelson Mandela had been inaugurated as president. Wow, I don't even know what else to say about it, but just check out Shepherd and Butchers on Netflix. Like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is, Mr. Skitty. Ha 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 ha. Big, goddamn slogan.